Moving on to the next talk on is it safe to be transplanted from deceased donor with vaccine induced immune thrombocytopenia. May I invite the speaker, Dr. Swarnalata Guttiti. I invite the chairpersons for this talk, Dr. Vinay Malhotra, Dr. Manjuri Sharma, and Dr. Jacob George. Over to the chairpersons.
It's my pleasure to invite Dr. Swarnalata to give this talk on the problems of whether we can accept donors who have developed vaccine-induced thrombocytopenia and whether it can cause any harm to the recipient. So something new, but we also had a patient who had this problem, and the decision to undergo a transplant is a bit of a contentious issue. So over to Swarnalata to answer these questions.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And I should congratulate the organizers for having conducted such a wonderful conference. I think this is the first time happening in a full, complete conference happening in a hybrid way during this pandemic time. I really appreciate the organizers and I thank them for giving me the opportunities. So for today, my topic is it safe to be transplanted from a deceased donor with vaccine-induced immune thrombocytopenia? So during first part of this pandemic, we were trying to, know the disease cause. We are trying to find out the protocols for the management, and as an nephrologist, we are trying to see how we can do a transplant during this pandemic. During the second part of the pandemic, I think the challenge is, how to vaccinate the whole world during a short span of time, and then the side effects associated with vaccine. And most important side effect of concern was the thrombocytopenia. So it was first reported in January in US, and subsequently it has been reported across the world. And one of the major series which has reported by the European Medicine Agencies showed that it was the Covishield which was most important the vaccine which has produced this immune thrombocytopenia, and they have reported the most common side being the cerebral venous thrombosis. So they have seen in 169 patients after vaccinating about 34 million. And then the Pfizer vaccine, they have reported 35 cases of the cerebral venous thrombosis after vaccinating 54 million population. And even the Moderna, the mRNA vaccine also had a 5 report case of this complication after vaccinating about 4 million patients. So thereafter, we see number of case reports or case series being published from various countries. But if you look at the underlying mechanism, it is nothing but the antibodies against the platelet factor 4. These antibodies, they form immune complexes, and then they cross-react with the platelet, and they activate the platelet. This is actually similar to what we see in what is called as a heparin-induced thrombocytopenia. Though these antibodies are against this platelet factor 4, but they are different, antibody binding epitopes. So it is quite different, and though the clinical manifestation, the antibodies are the same. And thereafter, we have come up with a guidelines how to diagnose and how to have a therapeutic recommendation for this new syndrome. And this vaccine-induced thrombocytopenia is, it is defined when we see a thrombosis, most frequently in the cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, but it is also seen in other arterial, and then, the typical DVT, and then the other sites like splanchnic circulation. In association with thrombocytopenia, that's platelet count of less than 1.5 lakhs and elevated D dimers of more than 4,000 with a positive test of antibodies against platelet factor 4. This is the diagnostic criteria of the so-called BIT. So, as a nephrologist, we do have come across this thrombotic complication in our patients. So, with our experience, we had seen 3 patients in our hospital. So, first was 30 years old male who didn't have any of the comorbid condition, who took this Covishield vaccine, who presented with a swelling of feet. But he landed up in medicine department. They have initially investigated, and they found out to have this DVT along with the thrombosis of the inferior vena cava and pulmonary thromboembolism. That was then referred to us because he had a proteinuria of 12 grams protein. A subsequent evaluation revealed he had so many, the comorbidities, like he had factor 5 laden mutation. He had, of course, antibodies against the COVID with IgM was positive, and he also had a PLAR2, the receptor antibodies. So we were wondering it was a vaccine which has induced the thrombosis and subsequently the membranous nephropathy, or he had some hematological complication which was aggravated by the vaccine, or did he had a primary membranous nephropathy because PLAT2 was also positive, and subsequently because of vaccination which was triggering factor, and he had ended up in having the thrombocytopenia and thrombotic complication. So it meant the sequence of events we didn't know, but he had this proteinuria and the plateau antibodies. So we treated him with, we couldn't do a biopsy, we treated him with Ponticelli regimen. Of course, fortunately, he's responding. He is still on this regimen, and proteinuria has come down significantly from 12 grams to 2 grams now. Another patient was 42 years old male who already had a membranous nephropathy, and he was on treatment with Ponticelli, and subsequently he was only partial responder, so he received rituximab also. He took this Covishield vaccine, and within 5 days of this vaccine, he developed a chest pain and breathlessness. When he was on evaluation, he was found to have acute pulmonary thromboembolism, and his antibodies against this SARS-CoV was positive, and he received a thrombolysis. And third patient was already an ESRD patient who presented with a sudden absence of thrill in the fistula, and we found him to have a thrombosis of the fistula. He underwent thrombectomy. So we did come across such complication in our patients too. But most interesting case which I would like to discuss is, the weight in a patient who landed up in having a brain death, and dilemma was to whether to take a patient, for organ donation or not. So I'd like to briefly describe the patient and the case details first. She was an 18 years old girl. Unfortunately, she wanted to go to US. So that's the reason why parents insisted on taking a Covishield rather than the Covaxin. By then, only Covaxin was available. Covishield were not available. Despite that, they insisted the girl to take the Covishield vaccine. And she had no comorbidities. She presented almost 10 days after the vaccine with a headache, fever of 3 days duration. She had a vomiting and difficulty in walking. And on the day of presentation, she had one episode of seizure as well. So as I said, she received Covaxin 10 days before this presentation, the symptoms. She had no previous comorbidities like hypertension, diabetes, or coagulation abnormalities, or feature suggestive connective tissue disorder, or any other medication, including the heparin. On examination, she the GCS was very poor, and she was intubated and put on ventilator immediately. And then at the same time, the neuroimaging was studied that showed extensive cerebral venous sinus thrombosis with the extension of the right frontal hemorrhage, and there was a periregional edema with mass effect, and intraventricular hemorrhage was also seen. A neurosurgery consultation was taken, and the same evening she underwent a decompressive craniotomy. And further investigation revealed anemia, thrombocytopenia, platelet count counts were only 50,000, and the coagulation abnormality coagulation profile was quite normal except for the D-dimer, which is very much elevated. It was 14,000. And all other workup, because she was 18-year-old girl, so all other connective tissue disorder and then the infection workup was also done, which were all negative. The ANCA, dsDNA, C3, C4, APLA, everything was negative, and infection workup like dengue, malaria, leptospira, scrub typhus, all were negative. Even the heparin-induced thrombocytopenia was also negative in her. So there was no further improvement, and she subsequently she worsened, and then she went into hypotension. Though to begin with, her vitals were stable, so she was put on all the supportive care, including the vasopressors, and then the platelet transfusion, the anticoagulants, antiepileptics, and other supportive care. And tracheostomy is also done after a week. So in view of thrombocytopenia, increased D-dimer, and thrombotic complication, history of COVID vaccine a week before the presentation, and no other condition which was, which could be explained, which could explain her condition, the possibility of vaccine-induced thrombotic thrombocytopenia was considered. However, in our case, antibodies against the platelet factor 4 was negative. And subsequently, the patient condition worsened, and the pupils were dilated and fixed. And subsequently, EEG also showed the isoelectric activity, and apnea test was done to confirm the brain death, and both the tests were negative. And when at this time, the challenge were whether to consider her for organ donation, whether to go for a counseling or not. And subsequently, if they agree, and surprisingly, the parents were so educated, and one of the family member of that particular family was like doctor, so it was easier for us to approach them and then convince them for organ donation. So once they have agreed for organ donation, the other challenges were whether to accept such patient with case as organ donor, and what are the legal formalities, because as you all know, now it is a pandemic, and then the whole of the world is being vaccinated. There are certain protocols to report all these adverse effects to know the efficacy or the safety of this vaccine. So there are a lot of protocols to be, for legal formalities to be fulfilled for this process. And the third one was like whether the recipient who received these organs from such a patient would have a normal course, or they would also face such complication like thrombotic thrombocytopenia or any other hematological complication. So we have explained the donor family. They have readily agreed, and we have also spoken to the concerned the state authorities and then the central authorities about these adverse events, and we have fulfilled all the whatever formalities required. And we went ahead with organ donation, and then the heart, lung, liver, and 2 kidneys were retrieved. And we have also organized the post-mortem examination as a part of this ADFI report, and the organs were allocated as per our regional guidelines protocols. When I come to the recipient, heart and lung recipient was a combined recipient. He was a 22 years old girl. She was been waiting for this combined transplant since 2018 because of lack of this size match and age match donor. And luckily, she underwent transplantation. We have explained all the the informed consent of possibility of the complications after transplantation. Unfortunately, the post-op period has been uneventful, and she was extubated within 24 hours, and she did not face any of the hematological complication. Liver transplant was 64 years old lady, decompensated liver disease with no history of portal or portal venous thrombosis or the bleeding manifestation, and she was not vaccinated within 4 weeks of this transplantation. She also had an eventful post-operative course, but she was found to have the elevated D-dimer. Initial on the day first it was 385, and subsequently it rose to around 3000 on the day 7th, and subsequently it came down. Platelet also lowest recorded was 60,000. And she was she received this anticoagulation for the initial 3 days. Subsequently it followed by the acosprin, and her the LFT is normalized within 5 days, and she was discharged within 2 weeks. And both the kidney recipients, like first recipient was 31 years old female, presumed CIN. She was maintained dialysis for 4 years and waiting for 3 years. And kidney transplantation was done with the informed consent. And she received the usual immunosuppression protocol, ATG followed by the immunosuppression. And she had a brisk diuresis and immediate graft function, and then no immunological complication, including all the correlation parameters were normal. Even the kidney 2 recipient was also young, 22 years old male, presumed CIN, 4 years on dialysis, 3 years on waiting list. And we have informed about this complication before taking for transplantation, and the usual immunosuppression protocol was followed. So now, as I said, like we have case reports of this WIT. Against all with the vaccines. It's not only Covishield. The more reported case were against the Covishield, but we have seen the case reports. In patients who have received the other vaccines, also including the mRNA vaccines and other adenovirus vaccines. So incidence is said to be 1 in 10,000 in a 10 lakh population. And the risk is more predominantly seen in young females. And the site is not usual. It is seen in cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, splanchnic thrombosis, and rarely pulmonary thromboembolism. And this one of the meta-analysis has showed that there are more case reports of cerebral venous thrombosis after this vaccine, and they have tried to define the criteria. When do you define as VIT associated cerebral venous sinus thrombosis? So it says, so when there is a post-vaccine venous thrombosis on imagology, along with thrombocytopenia and anti-platelet factor 4 antibodies, as is called as a definitive diagnosis. It's probable when you have this post-vaccine central venous thrombosis, along with either the thrombocytopenia or the platelet factor 4, plus we have an elevated D-dimer. That's called probable. And possible if you have only the post-vaccine the cerebral venous thrombosis and either thrombocytopenia or the platelet factor 4 antibodies. This is called as a possible. So, and all these patients, like 40% of these patients with VIT and then cerebral venous thrombosis, they 40% death rate is seen. And it is common that basically patients who now we see the whole world is being vaccinated, and in millions of population. And predominantly the site of the thrombosis is the central venous sinus thrombosis, and 40% are likely to die. And it is likely that more and more patients in future we will see patients with the VIT causing a brain death, and there's a possibility of the organ donation, particularly when it is happening in millions, though the complication rate is very less. So just trying to review the literature. So we have few case reports from the US and UK registries. So US has reported 13 deceased donor who had a VIT with complication after the vaccine. And then donation has happened only in 10 patients, and they have led to a 27 the grafts in 26 patients. The survival rate was 21, that is graft survival patient, 6 grafts lost were there, and 1 patient died. So hematological complications were also seen in these patients. 7 patients had a hematological complication, and 3 bleeding, and then 4 graft thrombosis with a mean duration of 6 days. So usually most of the time the complication happens within first few weeks. So you should be very vigilant in the first few weeks. UK had 18 deceased donors with complication. 18 patients when they donated. 46 grafts were donated. And transplantation happened in 45 recipients. There were 30 kidney patients, liver 9, lung 1, heart 3, and simultaneous pancreas kidney transplantation 1 and islet 1. So they have not mentioned about the outcomes, but they said they did come across few of the hematological complications. And what are the challenges when you are considering of it as a deceased donor? So as I said, we have a basic thing is the legalities of documentation, particularly with respect to the notifying the adverse events following immunization, and in association with whatever is the legal formality with respect to the brain death, and particularly when it's happening in a massive way across the whole world. So it is very important for us to report it, to know what is the safety and then the efficacy of these the vaccinations. And which type of the vaccination, what is the duration, all these things. There is a lot of protocols for the documentation. These should be fulfilled. That is first challenge. Second is transplantability of these organs. As I said, because most of the organs will also get damaged because of the thrombosis or hemorrhage. So most of the time we see that these organs are not usable for the organ donation. And the third challenge was, despite these organs being functioning, so what are the chances that the recipient will have a natural course? The recipient will not have, this complication, the same complication, or the thrombosis of the graft, or the untoward outcomes. So, as I said, these in our patient, we have tried to overcome all these, and we have tried to document whatever is required with respect to the ADFI in consultation with the central and the state authorities. And we also organized the postmortem examination at the same donor hospital during the time of the retrieval. And as I said, second the challenge is most of the organs, they get damaged due to thrombosis. So at the time of the organ evaluation and optimization, you see that the organs, the patient donor is properly optimized, and the organs are preserved. They don't get damaged because of this thrombotic complication. And the third problem is as I said, this is basically it's similar to that of the heparin, and most of the time in organ optimization we try to use these anticoagulants, and we should be very vigilant in using these anticoagulants. We should try to avoid heparin. Basically, we should try to use these direct the antifactors, antibodies as the oral anticoagulants as one of the anticoagulants, not the heparin. And in fact, the NHS has given a protocol how to use these anticoagulants during the optimization and the retrieval process. And coming to the recipient challenge, the informed consent should be taken. The patient should be well informed about the complications and then the untoward reaction of post-transplantation, including the graft thrombosis and the graft loss, and sometimes the patient loss as well. And there is a possibility that these organs, they carry the activated B cells, and this is carried to the recipient through the donor organ. This is what is called as a passenger leukocyte syndrome, and these activated B lymphocytes can form the antibodies, including the anti-platelet factor 4 antibodies, and they can initiate the same process in the recipient. And then they can also have any other, the complication, including the rejection, because this passenger leukocyte syndrome, not only, they can produce antibodies against the recipient antigen and can initiate a rejection reaction. So particularly this is seen predominantly in the liver transplant, followed by the lung, small bowel, and the pancreas transplantation. And of course, there should be a recipient selection, because the recipients who have been vaccinated recently, particularly within 4 weeks of the transplantation, are more likely to have this complication. And the patients who had already had hemorrhagic and thrombotic complications prior to transplantation are more likely to have this complication. So they should always have a recipient screening before we accept this organ for these patients. And of course, after transplantation, there should be a meticulous monitoring, particularly with respect to the coagulation profile. The platelet should be monitored, particularly in the initial few weeks after transplantation, the D-dimer, the coagulation profile, and antiplatelet factor 4. In recipients, however, we can use heparin without any adverse events, but of course, we should monitor for the antiplatelet factor antibodies if they are present, and patients, if you're suspecting the WIT in this recipient, we should avoid. In conclusion, considering the shortage of these organs and the massive vaccination program, which is ongoing across the world with millions of population being vaccinated, and this vaccine usually targets the central venous sinus thrombosis, causing the possibility of increased brain death. So it is worthwhile to accept these patients as a deceased donor. But however, you should take necessary precautions when you're considering. You should optimize the donor. You should see that all the organs are functioning well. And after transplantation also, you should monitor the recipient meticulously with respect to the hematological complication. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm ready to answer any queries if they are there.
Thank you, Dr. Swarnalata. It was actually a very eye-opening talk, subject which most of us are not aware of. We had a small
we have after this donation, we had successful donation. I had two such cases, one from Mumbai and then one from Delhi. So I have shared my experience, and I said all our recipients are doing good. Now it's been 3 months. All the recipient heart, the combined heart and lung, the liver and the 2 kidneys. But I think it was called off, the donation in Mumbai, and then the Delhi was called off, fearing that recipient might not do well.
Okay, now you just mentioned that there's some similarity between this vaccine-induced thrombocytopenia and heparin-induced thrombocytopenia, but to develop thrombotic episodes and it is quite rare, is it not? Whereas in these patients seem to have a thrombosis. So
yes, exactly, sir. As I said, the antibodies are the same. So it is against the platelet factor 4, but the epitopes against which this antibody binds, it is different. So the HET usually presents as the thrombocytopenia. And in fact, it continues even after the stoppage of heparin for some time. Here it is, it not only produces thrombocytopenia, but initial for the first case report was only thrombocytopenia, but subsequent case series have shown that it is not only thrombocytopenia, but they also produce thrombotic complication. And thrombotic, it is not in the usual side, it's unusual sides. Maybe.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that just like in TMAs, could it be that this vaccine is producing endothelial damage and producing thrombosis and a consumptive thrombocytopenia?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. If you look at whether it is the natural course of the COVID infection or whatever is the vaccination, even in the infection, it is the hyperimmune response. We have different stages. It is inflammatory response. Then we have endothelial damage, thrombotic. So the mechanism is the same. So when you are doing vaccination also is stimulate your immune response.
All right. And another thing about
basically it's not seen in every individual, it's not hyperimmune response. That's why I have shared one of our case where we found all possible antibodies. He had that patient, the first patient who had presented with DVT and inferior vena cava thrombosis.
Is it similar to the for the COVID infection producing thrombosis? Like in COVID infection, we do see renal vein thrombosis also, but surprisingly in this vaccine, it seemed to be predominantly cerebral venous thrombosis. Have there been any reports of renal vein thrombosis with this vaccination? And is the thrombosis with the vaccine different from that occurring with the COVID infection?
Sorry, sir?
No, what I'm saying is COVID infection produces thrombosis. We get to see renal vein thrombosis also. But this vaccine-induced thrombosis, which you mentioned, was made predominantly cerebral venous thrombosis. There's no reports of renal vein thrombosis. So it's the same or is it different? The mechanism of thrombosis with the COVID infection and the COVID vaccine. Am I clear? Because all your reports were mainly cerebral venous thrombosis, not much of thrombosis in other areas, especially renal vein thrombosis.
You? Am I audible?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So I think there was some problem with networking. Am I audible?
Yeah, go ahead.
So what was the question, sir? There was some.
Question is that with corona infection, we get to see a lot of thrombosis is generalized. We get to see renal vein thrombosis, etc. Whereas with this vaccine, which you mentioned, it was predominantly cerebral venous thrombosis.
Yes.
Is there any difference, and why is the vaccine producing more of cerebral venous thrombosis, not likely to produce renal vein thrombosis, and is the mechanism different from a COVID infection?
The mechanism, no, the mechanism is the same, sir. But I mean, I don't know why there is a difference in the involvement of the sites. This site is an unusual site, particularly with CNS and splanchnic. In fact, now if you look at the literature, now they're reporting more cases of the intestinal gangrene and then the emergency surgeries, splanchnic involvement. The site, I don't know, so I did not get the.
Okay, fair enough. I think it's a very interesting topic to be discussed.
Not the vaccine.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
may we consider winding up the session?
Please.
Yeah, just one question. Am I audible?
Yeah, go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yeah, go ahead, please. Dr. Manjuri.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Swarnalata, for a very good presentation on a very new subject, So it looks very promising because if we can take up donors with VITT, we can increase the pool of donors over here. And then we need to have very timely, accurate data, and we also should have a national data for better understanding, and also for formulating the guidance for donation with your VITT. So one question I'd like to ask you regarding the patients you have seen with VITT. You mentioned about a vaccine. One patient received a vaccine and the other received Covishield. So can you just tell me, was there any difference in presentation in both these patients regarding the receiving the two different vaccines, Covishield and your
Okay,
Covaxin?
there was only one case report and one case report of WIT, turning out to be deceased donor. We had in nephrology, we had nephrology patients presenting with thrombotic complication. When we looked at all patients, they received the Covishield. All patients, they have Covishield, they presented within 5 to 7 days, within a week of receiving this Covishield.
Okay, like how it has been mentioned, yeah. Okay, thank you so much for a very good presentation and a very new topic. Thank you so much.
My message is you should not be apprehensive, and it's not like absolute contraindication. We can
That's
still
true.
consider with taking into account, the consent, whatever I have addressed, the donor factor, factor, the informed consent, and look at all these things, and still we can go ahead.
I'm sorry
that's
to
what it can
interrupt. May I
increase the
consider
donor
winding
pool.
up the session? I request the chairpersons to wind up the session. We are.
I think we had a good session, and thank you, organizers, for giving us this opportunity to chair the session. Over to the next speaker.
Thank you very much.